Hi, I'm Dave with Colonial Saw. I'm here with Jeff from Greene Street, and we're here to follow up on the STRIEBIG and how it's done for the Greene Street business. Jeff, you've owned the saw for 5 months now. Mm-hmm. What has the STRIEBIG done for your shop, for your business?
I think the biggest impact it's had is in the speed. So we're able to break down sheet goods a lot faster now. And aside from the speed, it would be the accuracy. So I'm able to cut parts out of sequence now, whereas before I would want to make all of my 30.5-inch cross cuts at the same time. So I'd be stacking up these rips of material and then cross cutting them all at the same time. Now I'm able to work sheet by sheet, and the STRIEBIG is accurate enough where these parts are ending up the exact same size, even though I'm cutting them maybe a half hour apart.
You mentioned the accuracy, but also you touched on the speed. Mm-hmm. How is it faster than previously cutting on the table saw or the sliding table saw that you used to have?
Yeah, so before with the slider, after every cut, you sort of had to either walk around the slider and take your part and put it on one of the carts. That, or you're reaching over, and it's not a very fluid sort of motion. So the STRIEBIG is definitely better in that sense, where really most of the time, you're standing here in this second vertical cutting station. So I can have a cart directly behind me, and I'm sort of just bouncing back and forth. Aside from that, I have the ability here, if I'm doing a big job and I'm cutting, let's say I have 8 sheets that need to turn into cabinet sides that are all the exact same size. Well, I can stack up 3 at a time, and I can start making cuts on 3 sheets of plywood at the same time, 2 up here on the mid fence. So, in certain instances, it's up to 3 times faster. So going from a sliding table saw to the STRIEBIG, we're a 2-man shop. So sometimes I'm out on an installation and Rob is in the shop, or vice versa. We have the ability now to be able to cut, large material, heavy material, and load the saw with 1 man. So we were looking at some countertops that I cut up before, a butcher block. So these are like 1.5-inch thick material, 4x10, 1.125 particle board. It's heavy. Yep. So I'm able to, get it onto an A-frame cart. I roll it over, and I can get it onto the saw by myself. There's no way, even our typical 5x9 millimeter material, there's no way that I'm able to get that onto a sliding table saw by myself. So with the STRIEBIG, really increase our capability to work by ourselves. I don't need to, even when we're in the shop together, I don't need to grab Rob and say, hey, can you help me get the sheet up on the saw? Because I can get it by myself. So that's really been great.
Right. Any other particular applications? Have you ever straight-lined pieces on the saw?
We have. So we tend to work from rough lumber, and we only have, a regular 10-inch joiner, which has 7-inch bed. So we've had some really long pieces, like a 10-foot piece of maple we threw up here, up on the mid fence, and we're able to straight line it. So
1 pass, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
And we made a video cutting a butcher block, and the difference between using a track saw, which is how we would have to do that before, yep, to using the STRIEBIG, it's
night and day.
You can't compare the two.
You used to have a sliding table saw here. You took that out of the shop in favor of the STRIEBIG. But is there anything that slider had that you miss now that you don't have it?
So there's only 2 things I can think of. So this STRIEBIG doesn't have a scoring unit, and I did like having a scoring unit on the table saw. I do know that it is an option, and we haven't had any issues. I'll say that. Cut a lot of melamine and plywood, and haven't had tear out to the point where it was a problem. I could see maybe as blades get more dull, which is sort of a blade issue, not so much a STRIEBIG issue, but. There's that, and then repetitive cross cuts on narrow material. Let's say you're building cabinets with 3-inch rails in the top. It seems that maybe it's a little bit easier on a sliding table saw, just because of the way the stops are set up. But you did say that there's a workaround that maybe I'm not privy to.
Yeah, well, you have your standard digital measuring stop that does have the extra extension arm that flips down to be able to measure the small parts. But yes, you're reading in the analog, if you will, the tape measure with the pointer finger there. You have the digital measuring stop on your saw, But yes, admittedly, the flip stop doesn't come close to the center shelf fingers here. But our workaround there is we can make ourselves an extension piece by just simply cutting a square piece, which the saw does very well, by the way, and then simply screwing a mending plate into the upper right-hand corner of that nice square rectangular piece that's about this big, and that piece becomes your extension arm. So you can digitally measure your small parts and do it just the way you would with the analog stop.
That's good to know. I have a project now.
So Jeff, you mentioned that you don't have scoring, or the separate scoring saw on this STRIEBIG. Of course, it is available as an option, as you mentioned. But of course, for those watching here, we do have a method of scoring with the main blade of the saw. We go up with the score cut and down with your finish cut. I can show you that real quickly. Just a quick pass here. You notice that I scored the front side of the material because on a vertical panel saw, the side that's up against the machine is my reliably good, clean-cut side. It's the side that's out by the operator that you're worried about the chipping or the blowout. So we've scored the front side on the way up and cut through like we normally would on the way down, and that takes care of both sides of the panel. And we did no more motion than we normally would have had we even used a scoring saw.
Right.
We're just starting at a different point and using the return part of the cut cycle for the scoring. Just to kind of show you what's happening there, I'm going to open the saw door and how we're going about this. There's our saw. There's more dust in there than normal because we didn't turn the dust collector on. But when I have the saw down here below the panel and plunge the saw head in, you notice that the saw is deeper than the riving knife. And when I'm plunging it in though until the riving knife touches the panel, and then I'm going up the panel with my score cut with the blade a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch deep. That's my score pass. And then at the top of the panel, I plunge all the way in. You know, that's a beautiful way, of course, of scoring. It's simple. There's one blade. There's never two blades to have to align with one another. But as you score more and more, when you use this method, you're going to be sending that blade out to the sharpener a bit more often because it's being used for both purposes, for scoring and for cutting. So that is the ultimate justification for adding the scoring saw unit, which is easily added to this machine. Even after the fact. You know, eventually your sharpening costs will justify the cost of the scoring saw unit. You know, when you start cutting tons and tons of case goods, especially melamine and things like that. So, but just to show you where that would go, the scoring blade acts in front of the main blade, so it's acting in this kind of a cavity area right here. This extra deflector would not be there. In fact, this whole shroud changes out. But that scoring unit can be installed in this area in, really 15, 20 minutes is all it takes to install a scoring unit. Well, and we have the instructions and the videos to show you how to do that even if you wanted to try it yourself even. So, but then you can score and cut just like you did on the sliding table saw in one pass. You're still going to return that saw head back to its starting point for the next cut, but you will ultimately save on sharpening costs with that scoring unit. So Jeff, you've been on a sliding table saw. You're now on a STRIEBIG. We know that every shop starts out on a table saw, regular cabinet saw, right? You know, going forward, knowing what you know now, when it's time to go from that table saw to your upgrade, what direction would a small shop take? What should they take?
I would definitely recommend the STRIEBIG, and you know, it's not something that we ever thought about. I wasn't aware that there were panel saws like this with the accuracy and all the features and everything. You know, we're used to seeing this rickety Home Depot, you know, panel saw. We didn't know about panel saws like this. The advantages in a small shop, I think, you know, are the footprint. So we're next to the STRIEBIG now, and this is where we had the sliding table saw. And it reached all the way back to the lumber rack, and when the fence was extended this way, the table rather, you know, all the way to the edge bander, and the width was, you know, all the way out to here. So just the space saving for a small shop is a huge point. We were actually able to add a machine right here, which, you know, the reason we moved into a bigger shop is because we didn't have any room for more machines. So if you can add another machine, you know, 2 machines where you had 1, that's a great thing. The accuracy is huge. You know, I mentioned the ability to cut parts out of sequence and get the same exact dimensions. Using optimization, you know, I might have parts for cabinet 1 on sheet 1 and also sheet 12, and, you know, cabinet 2 might be on 3 and 9. So it's nice to be able to cut parts out of order and, you know, guarantee that they're going to be square and accurate. And just the easy use, you know, I'm not lugging sheets up onto a sliding table saw. It's saving my back. I'm pretty young. I'm only 35. So if I can stay at this pace where I'm not hurting myself, you know, that's even better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think the advantages of a STRIEBIG are huge, and really it's the way to go.
You've mentioned a number of times the accuracy of the machine. Expand upon that a little bit as to why that's so critical, you know, downstream from here.
Yeah, so we've transitioned primarily to, you know, European frameless style cabinets. So parts are going from the STRIEBIG to the edge bander, you know, to our 2 boring machines, and then they're being assembled. So if we don't have, you know, square parts going into the edge bander, the edge banding is going to be affected. And then that snowballs into the boring. Now all of a sudden, you know, our boring is going to be slightly off. Then when we go to dowel the cabinet parts, you know, we might have some inaccuracies there. And they all stack up to where when you're starting to gang these boxes together on site, you know, you have sides that are slightly off, you know, things front to back aren't lining up. So, you know, I think the key to European frameless cabinets are that you have consistent and accurate parts. So they all need to be the exact same size. They all need to be very square. And, you know, the STRIEBIG allows us to do that. And it's so easy. We're not thinking about, you know, with a table saw, you're always thinking about, am I pushing up against the fence perfectly? You know, do I have everything set up square? With the STRIEBIG, we just roll a sheet on and we cut it and it comes off square. You know, we've been using this thing for almost 6 months now and still dead square every time. So it allows us to focus on other things and not have to worry about the accuracy of our cuts.
Do you see enough cost savings in your daily operations to justify a $600 or $700 a month payment on the saw?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are going to go that direction. We have machines in the shop that are financed. And, you know, if you want to expand your business and you want to try and optimize the way you're doing things, usually it comes at the cost of having to finance machinery. We don't just get like phone calls and people send giant checks where we can buy these things outright. It does happen sometimes, but I think that, you know, $600 or $700 is very easy to stomach for this. You know, that's it's actually a lot less than I was expecting. And if you were going to finance a sliding table saw that has some of the features that this has, you're looking at way more than that. We're only a 2-man shop, so having the speed of the STRIEBIG, the ability to take on these larger jobs, it's huge for us. You know, we're able to push jobs out faster, and when you're just 2 guys, you can only put out so much work in a year. So if we can add 1 or 2 or 4 more jobs to the year, you know, that's how we really see ourselves growing. potentially bringing in someone else and expanding the business. So I think a STRIEBIG is a great way to increase your productivity and really put out a better product.
And go to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.